By the way, I consider myself a Zionist after what I learned what Zionism actually means when I went to Israel. And I also met a lot of Zionists who are against the occupation in the West Bank. A lot of Zionists, so like my understanding of Zionism completely changed. Okay. Oh, by the way, based on some definitions of Zionism, I'm not a Zionist, right?
Yeah, but to define it the way that you are, because now that you've said it, you have to clarify, right? What do you mean?
Yeah, I mean, if you basically there's a lot of history. Zionism originally was a secular movement. It had not, Zionism got corrupted when religion got mixed with it, right?
Or so was an atheist. Yeah, Israel could have been in Uganda. Remember?
Yeah, it could. Yeah, I mean, Zionism originally was meant to protect Jewish people. Like it was a really noble idea, something that I wish we could one day do when I go for atheists. But no, I mean, it was a very bold movement to protect, like a unique idea to come up with a way to protect Jews against all the discrimination that they were facing all around the world, and it worked.
They just put them in the worst place possible.
I mean, at that time, it was the best place possible, Ali. It
You
didn't
so? I don't know. How much of that is revisionist history?
Yeah, I mean, okay, so I think the worst thing about that place was not the Arabs and the Muslims surrounding it. The worst thing about that was the fact that the Dome of the Rock and the temple was there, because it turned the movement into something religious. That's the worst. I think that's what made it worse. The problem with like a lot of people, like, oh, they picked the worst neighborhood with all the enemies around, all these Muslims doing. Compared to the Russians and the Germans and everyone and Ukraine, like compared to all of the people that were anti-Jewish, that didn't seem like a very bad place at that time. The problem with that land at that time.
When you point that out, then they talk about how they were discriminated against in Muslim countries too.
No, yeah, they were, but almost equally. Like, at least the Muslims in that area were like less hostile. Yes, but I'm just saying the whole world was against them. Okay?
Oh, Israel should have been in Ontario, or it should have been it could have been in Alberta or Saskatchewan.
There was no land for them to pick. There was no land for them available to pick. No, but I'm just saying the thing that ruined Zionism was the religious aspect of it, which has made it rotten from the core, rather than the enemy from outside. It ended up being the enemy from the inside that ruined the movement. Okay, but I am for like Israel. What I like is Israel became a land to protect the Jewish people from harm, but it should have evolved into a land that was not meant for Jews. It should have evolved into it could still be like a land that is home to anyone who's oppressed, right? Like, so here's the thing. I do believe in ethno-states if the ethno-states foundation was based on protecting an ethnicity that is under attack, not based on my ethnicity being superior. If it's based on an ethnicity that is under attack and it requires protection, that ethno-state makes sense, right? You are not making your ethnicity seem like superior to other races. Other people are seeing it as inferior. You're trying to create a protection for yourself. So in that same sense, maybe like, I don't know, some other forms might have made sense. But right now, the Jewish people are safe outside of Israel. Okay, the Jewish people are like, there is enough like that environment. I mean, there is still a lot of anti-Jewish views, but that environment does not exist anymore. And like, Jewish people have a home in the United States, they have a home in Canada, they have a home in Europe. Yes, you could point to attacks against them and hate against them. It's not the same thing. Okay, so I think and also think if you make Israel not being a Jewish state, doesn't mean that all the Jews around the world are going to be unprotected. I do think the spirit of Israel being a land for the people who are oppressed, and just making it, continuing, and that, like, for example, I hate the fact that Israel does not even recognize the Armenian genocide, right? Like like this whole idea of never forget, never forget. What are you talking about? You guys are forgetting left and right, right? You got like Israel is not pushing against China. Israel is not pushing not like they're like never forget. Oh yeah, never forget the genocide that was against your people, and you're not even recognizing because of the relationship that you have with Turkey as a country. Israel doesn't even recognize the Armenian genocide. So don't like you're joking. Never forget. Like this is
like Godwin's law. Like I understand why Godwin's law is there, but in some cases, like when it's applied in absolute terms, where you should never ever compare anything, that's just BS. Because if you can't say never forget, and then also say, well, any comparison to what happened in World War II is just a violation of Godwin's law and shouldn't be taken seriously. You can't do both.
I mean, we cannot not do Godwin law. We're talking about Israel. How could we not? It's the foundation of it.
No. But I'm saying, you know what I mean, right? Like right. If you do not bring up comparisons when there are sort of demagogues on the rise and things like that, if you don't do that, then never forget it becomes meaningless.
I think Israel, based on its foundation, could have, based on what it stood for as a country, could have been the leading country when it comes to human rights. That was it would have been its genesis, and it could have continued being its identity, right? It should have been the country that led the way against human rights abuses against Muslims in India, in China. The leading way to be against Turkey when it comes to not even remembering the Armenian genocide. Israel didn't even take a big stance when China started taking oppressing Jewish people in Israel, because they're not the right type of Jews, apparently, right? They're like religiously Jews, but like not ethnically the same Jews that they care about, which is like insane. But here's the thing. So the things that I don't like about Israel is the right-wing parties, the influence of religion in politics. Yes, I know it's more secular than all its neighbors, but it's more secular than all its neighbors, but it's less secular than the countries that I consider secular, like Canada, for example, or the United States. So
it's not like a Western country. It's not like Canada.
Or France. I don't like Netanyahu at all. I'm against the occupation, the settlements in the West Bank. I'm against all the forces within Israel that is trying to move it closer to an ethnic state and creates second-class citizenship for Arabs inside Israel. I'm against the war crimes that Israel has committed. Like, yes, I am for defending Israel as a nation, but I acknowledge that there has been many war crimes committed by the Israeli government. I'm against the how common it is for among a lot of Israeli politicians to openly advocate for collective punishment and justify it because of the horrible crimes committed by the other side. So these are the things that I don't like about Israel. The things that I do like about Israel, first of all, I like that it exists. Okay, Israel, it should exist as a country. I love Israel as a country. I want Israel to survive as a country. Okay, I love the fact that how free speech. How free people are to be against the government, to even be pro-Palestinian governments inside Israel. So free speech is something that is very protected in Israel. I love how when Israel's government does not commit human rights abuses, I love how effective they are at protecting itself, right? Like I love how efficient Israel's military and intelligence agencies are. No, I like how amazing, how smart and sophisticated Mossad is, and how
you like how they took out Fakhrizadeh.
Yes, exactly. I love how not just Fakhrizadeh. Every time, like the nuclear scientists in Iran, they basically they go in, they take care of, like this is a little tiny country that is like managing to somehow do the highest amount of damage against her enemies, right? When it's doing that without committing human rights abuses, I'm cheerleading that on, and I love the strength of Israel when it's doing that without committing human rights abuses. Okay. Okay, so I recognize. Okay, yes, I also like the fact that Israel is the only real democracy in that region. I like how Israel is the only LGBT, like is the leading LGBT friendly country in that region. I like how entrepreneurial the entrepreneurial spirit of Israel, how many new ideas, new businesses came out of Israel. Both when it comes to intellect, academia, innovation, Israel is not leading the world, not leading in these aspects in the region. Israel is leading in the world. Okay, Israel's technology is going to be the solution for the whole world when it comes to access to clean water, when it comes to green technology. Israel is going to save a lot of the planet when it comes to all of the investment that they made in coming up with a solution that the whole world is going to need at some point, right? So
Okay.
Okay.
Wow.
Wait. Two more things. I love Israel's history. If you're a history buff, you will love going to Jerusalem. Jerusalem
Oh,
is my number one favorite city in the world, and the number one thing I love about Israel
food.
is IDF girls.
I did well. You know what I was gonna say at the end of that? I was gonna say Gal Gadot. I still don't know how to pronounce her name, but her and Yuval Noah Harari. Well, now we're gonna start naming Israeli people, but that's okay.
No.
But anyway, yeah. So that's it. I think that's what we're talking about. I think this is a good place to come to because Armin, I think you and I largely agree on this issue, and I don't think you'll be able to pin us as pro or anti any other side. And we're agreeing way too much nowadays, so we need to find a stream where we don't. I think people miss us fighting.
Hey guys, if you want to join these streams live, get your comments and questions read by Ali and Armin and the guests, and most importantly, to get full access to the full video versions of all these episodes, become a patron. Link in the description below.